The basic equipment carried by any self-respecting landing party member in Star Trek, the original series consists of 3 main items: a phaser, a tricorder, and a communicator. The phaser for dealing with angry aliens, the tricorder for taking scientific readings, and the communicator for, communicating. Each piece of equipment became iconic in its own way. Set phasers to stun gave Star Trek another catchphrase, the tricorder's spinning and whirring invited intrigue, and the communicator made flip phones cool 40 years early. Typically, an Enterprise officer will use their communicator as a plot device to keep characters in different locations abreast of the developing plot. They were particularly great for bridging the gap between Enterprise scenes and action taking place on an alien planet. Often overlooked, however, is how the communicator can double as a weapon, those used by Captain Kirk and his crew in Star Trek, the original series, at least. 2 communicators could combine to create a powerful weapon in Star Trek, the original series. Star Trek, the original series Season 2's Friday's Child involves the Federation, represented by the Enterprise, jostling with the Klingons to strike a deal with the inhabitants of resource-rich Capella 4. To grease the wheels of diplomacy, Kirk, Spock, and McCoy hand over their phasers at the episode's outset, immediately upping the tension as Starfleet's heroes are forced to rely on wits rather than weapons. Such diplomacy comes back to bite the landing party when Capella 4 erupts into civil war and the Klingons' influence grows stronger. A manhunt for the humans begins, and while McCoy is busy playing midwife, Kirk and Spock mount a defense, cobbling together some rudimentary bows and arrows. At Kirk's suggestion, the pair also sync their communications to create a sonic disruption. The heroes combine sound beams to generate a vibration strong enough to trigger an avalanche at Vasquez Rocks, but this is no gentle nudge. Admittedly, Kirk and Spock aim their improvised sonic cannon at a weaker area of the cliff face, but the result is a surprisingly violent explosion and a storm of flying rock raining down upon their enemies, taking out at least 3 opponents. Used as sonic disruptors, Kirk and Spock's communicators don't just free a few loose rocks, they create a blast roughly equivalent to a stick of dynamite going off. Star Trek could have used the communicator's sonic disruption feature more often. Looking back, it's surprising that Star Trek didn't make more use of the communicator's most destructive function. There's very little fiddling involved in setting up the trap, with the only apparent requirement being the presence of 2 separate handsets. No added components or dismantling necessary. And given the power of the impact Kirk and Spock's joined communicators create, the function could surely be applied to more than just rocky foothills. A well-aimed blast at a piece of troublesome machinery could surely short the circuit, or at a load-bearing pillar to bring down a building. Or maybe just another avalanche during the next visit to Vasquez Rocks. There are a couple of possible reasons fans haven't seen communicators used as weapons much across Star Trek's timeline. Firstly, it's suggested that the technique could be unreliable, as Spock initially responds to his captain's idea with only a very slight chance it would work. While it does work in Friday's Child, Spock's immediate reaction implies an element of luck, either that, or Kirk and Spock are simply very good and other Starfleet officers would screw it up. It could also be argued that very rarely in Star Trek would 2 characters have communicators on their person but not phasers. All gadgets are confiscated in Friday's Child, but the landing party only has time to retrieve their communicators before going on the run, hence the lack of weapons. That isn't necessarily a common situation, and if Kirk had been in possession of his phaser, he would undoubtedly have used it to trigger the avalanche instead of the communicators.